Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mick Bighamian, director of Los Angeles Chess Club, and we're talking about the art of defense. So I want to show you one game that Gary Kasparov played in a simultaneous exhibition, and his opponent was creative enough to get a draw with him using stalemate. So Kasparov is white. This was a simul in 1986 in Uppingham, England, and he opened with d4. His opponent, Neil MacDonald, a British GM. He opened with d4, black played knight f6, c4, g6. So can we give a name to this opening yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. It could be King's Indian defense, it could be Grunfeld, it could be Benko, many different lines. But after knight c3, bishop g7, e4, d6, now it has an official name.
King's Indian defense.
The kid is right.
Yeah.
It's the kid. King's Indian defense. So there are like 8 different systems that white could play against King's Indian defense. And if you don't have a good opening repertoire as white, you definitely want to develop one. One of the most solid ones, for youngsters, I recommend what's called 4-pawn attack. It's full of tactics. And until you get to around 2000 level, you got to play a lot of tactical games. So f4 is what I recommend. If you want to play, when you get to that level, 1800, 1900, 2000, you want to play a little bit more solid. Knight f3, classical variation, is perfectly good line too. So Kasparov played this line after castles. Bishop e2. Now, the usual continuation for black is e5, the main line of King's Indian defense. Here, black played knight bd7. It still could transpose to the main line. After knight b7, white castles, and black played e5. So this game was played in 1986. Back then, this line as black was extremely popular. And even Fischer and Kasparov played on the black side of this line. However, these days, you don't see this very often. These days, mostly you see what's called the Panov variation, a6, knight c6, rook b8. And it's proven to be work just fine against the classical, against Samish, and against g3 systems. So this line is slightly inferior for black. After e5, white played bishop e3. Bishop e3 is famous as a Gligorich variation. And even Kasparov himself in official world championship matches and tournaments is played bishop e3 lines a lot. Usually the drawback to bishop e3 is this knight harassment. Knight g4, and white plays bishop here, getting a tempo with say f6 and then bringing it back to d2. But here black played rook e8, which is still a perfectly good move. And white played queen c2. And black played e takes d4. Now, if white captures with the knight, then black could play knight e5, knight c5. Both of those are perfectly good. But this is a simultaneous exhibition. In simul, you experiment with many different offbeat variations. So he captured with the bishop. And black to play c6. White to play rook fe1. We're still towards the end of the opening part of the game. So it's about developing pieces. And it's kind of closed system. King's Indian defense is a closed system. So the opening sometimes ends around move 15, 16, 17. Queen c7, rook ad1. With this move, white has touched every one of his pieces. Black, naturally, is a little bit behind in development. So black played b6. White played h3. These little rook moves, pawn moves on the rook file, have multiple effects. Even though it does create a target, but black, when he played b6, chances are he wants to fianchetto the bishop, so it won't be hitting this pawn. But this move prevents a piece from this square It prepares for a possible g4 if white wants to do that, and of course, escaping a square for the king. Capablanca, in many of his games, if you go over his games, you see that he pushed that rook pawn around his king side and the queen side both. After h3, black played bishop b7, and white played bishop f1. In many openings for white and black in classical systems, you see that when one king castles, usually keeps a knight or a bishop next to the king. And because it's only 3-point piece, it's very efficient to have that piece next to the king, which safeguards the entire king side. And bishop f1, black to play. Black finally touched all his pieces also. So the opening is over. It took 14 moves. And how do we assess this position? It's usually around here that you should come up with a plan. Well, let's go through the 5 factors assessing a position. And I'm trying to do this in 1 minute. Material, equal, not a factor. A space. White has more space. Black has nothing in its 4th row. White has bishop and 2 pawns. A little bit of space for white. Not a decisive factor, but definitely slightly better for white. Pawn structure. Both sides have 2-point islands. Not a factor. Activity. Whose pieces are more active? It's roughly equal. By the way, one point about pawn structure, very important point, is that black has a pawn on d6. In the exchange variation, e takes d4. This pawn is often there, but it's next to impossible for white to win that pawn. And that creates nice squares for black pieces to jump here, the knights. Okay, king safety. Both kings are safe, not a factor. So again, this difficult position, how to continue with the plan? It's just a matter of trying to get a space advantage. If you're not sure what plan to continue, get some space advantage. So in this position, after rook a d8, white played bishop e3. This is definitely where this bishop belongs. This way it's having an eye on both wings and possibly going to the king side, maybe with the idea of queen c1, bishop h6. It's always a good idea for white to trace this bishop with his dark square bishop. So bishop e3, and black started the action with knight e5. The immediate threat is knight takes f3 and double up white's pawns. It's a simultaneous exhibition. I'm guessing if this were not a simultaneous exhibition, Kasparov would have avoided by playing knight d2, threatening f4, and then knight back again. But it took. You see, in a simul, you're playing a lot of people. You got to make one move on each board and move to the next line. So you play the most obvious move, and you're hoping to go into an end game and then outplay your opponent. And this exchange clearly favored black because no more bad pawn. Black took with the pawn. It's white to play, and like I said, white wants to get some space advantage. So white played b4 here. Black to play, piece optimization. c5 opens this bishop diagonal. Trouble with that move is that white plays b5, and this pawn is going to give black some headache and a space advantage. He can sink in a piece over here next. And with f3, this bishop, in effect, is biting on granite along this diagonal. So after b4, black played bishop c8. Black also realized that the best square for that bishop is here. When there are mutual king pawns in the center, bishops are most ideal in these squares. Bishop c8, it's white to play, and white played c5. So white's threat is pawn takes, and if black plays pawn takes, he could play, for example, knight d5. Black cannot take with a pawn. And after knight takes, pawn takes, black pawns come under attack. So black didn't want this, and he played b5. Now this becomes the new target for white. So how do you attack it? a4, and black should not take, because after pawn takes b5, white has, or queen takes, white would be clearly better. So a6. So white can open the a file at will anytime, right? But it's usually a good idea to have a rook on that file. So white play rook a1 now. He knows black is not going to take, because as a result, black will have two broken pawns, and this pawn can easily be captured. Isolated pawns would be extremely weak, and it's just a matter of time before they drop. So after rook a1, there's nothing black can do on this side of the board. Now he's trying to create some accident on the other side of the board. As you know, in King's Indian defense, black attacks on the king side of the board. So knight h5 is a very common move, with the idea of either knight f4 or f5 coming. Knight h5, white to play g3. Okay, that's a good move. It prevents f4 square. So what was the second idea behind knight h5? f5. White to play, he decided to trade a couple of pawns. He played a takes b5, and black played a takes b5. So now he's controlling the entire open file. And then he played e takes f5. So black could take with the bishop or with the pawn. If he takes with the bishop, well, chances are white's going to move the queen away, threatening g4, forking the knight and the bishop. But black took with a pawn. Majority of times you find that pawn takes is better. And now it's white to play, and black is threatening serious stuff. So there's a famous saying in chess, do unto others before they do to you. Very good. Bishop g5, got the bishop outside. Black to play, rook d4, beautifully placed with a little threat. It's white to play. It's a simultaneous exhibition. So a lot of unnecessarily solid lines and valid continuation tactics sometimes works. White played bishop takes b5. So the idea is if pawn takes, knight takes, forking knight and a bishop, and in the meantime, white gets a rook and two pawns for knight and a bishop. He gets 1 point. So, but black played a different line, e4. He did not take the pawn. So white brought the bishop back, harassing the rook again, and this time rook captured on b4. From psychological point of view, one way that you can outplay your high-rated opponent is to play surprise moves against him, moves that he did not expect. And if you miss one of them and it happens to be a great move, you pretty much can win the game. So you notice McDonald is not playing what Kasparov is expecting him to play. It's white to play now, and white found another nice tactic. Black is going to lose a rook for a minor piece, right? Well, unless he decides to give up the queen, which is... So if rook takes bishop, knight takes queen. If pawn takes knight, bishop takes rook. So chances are black overlooked this move. So black is trying to go for the lesser evil choice. He played pawn takes pawn, pawn takes knight, and sure enough, white played rook takes, bishop takes rook. And of course, this is hanging now, but black played f4. Probably a move that Kasparov did not expect again. White played g takes f4, and black played knight takes f4. So if black can somehow win this game, it has to be by moves that Kasparov did not expect. Now Kasparov's weak king side is very weak at this point. So white played rook a8. Kasparov is famous in history as a very materialistic player. He's trying to win material, he's trying to hold on to the material. So he played rook a8, saving the rook. Black to play rook b2. You see how black is constantly improving position of his pieces? It's white to play. White has a difficult position clearly. And his queen is hanging. Oh. Don't panic. Don't panic. I panicked. After bishop takes, queen takes, then what? You don't have time to win the rook. So you panic now. So white played queen d1. First things first. Save the queen. Bishop. Yes, queen is overloaded right now. It's guarding two pieces. So the threat is, but even he doesn't have bishop takes because queen takes. And if you pick up the bishop, you get mated. Queen f2, queen h2. So black played bishop c3. Whose position do you like now? Black is all over whites. And there's a serious threat also with check here next. So Kasparov is white. Looks like he'd be lucky to draw this game. So now it's time to panic.
Take some of those pieces off.
What's the move?
Rook c8, so you can have queen g4.
But after trading queens, this whole rook he drops.
Take on f4 and what is it? Go down or something.
Take on f4 now.
Oh, I didn't see there was a rook on.
Yeah.
There's a rook on b2.
There's a rook on b2 also. So this is time for Kasparov to do something unexpected. If it just makes some tame defensive move like this, it fails after, say, knight check. I mean queen check here. It's mate next.
Take the knight and then queen d5.
So take the knight, and after take queen takes, then what?
Queen d5.
Queen g5?
d5.
Queen d5.
Check, and then you have bishop.
Okay. That's an interesting line. Let's see. Kasparov to play. Bishop takes.
Queen takes.
And you're saying queen takes.
Queen has to take.
Oh, the rook is here. So bishop takes. Queen takes. And queen d5. So what do you do after king h8?
Well, unless there's a mate, queen takes c8. Rook takes c8.
Threat is check and queen h2 mate. And if we rook f1 might fail to bishop e5. And now what? Now it's time to panic. Queen e5? Sacking the queen? Are you like Mitch?
You'd like to sacrifice other people's pieces.
Sacrificing your opponent's pieces? Okay, so back to the game. White has to come up with the concrete ways in order not to get mated. And the position is critical. So if you were white, how would you defend from this position? King is on g8, right? Thank you. White to play, and black's threats are serious. So white found the fact that black queen is overloaded, doing two defending. Rook takes c8. Now, of course, queen g7 does not work because of queen g4. And black has a nice discovery also with that bishop. So black took, queen takes c8, and of course, bishop takes f4. So white won 2 minors for his rook. When a series of trades have taken place, this is the time to do some assessment of the position. How would you assess the position now? Material. Queen, rook, 2 bishops. Queen, rook, 1 bishop. White is a whole piece ahead. A space. those are kind of secondary issues right now. Pawn structure, very much secondary, not as important. So material is by far the most important factor in this position. And whose king is more vulnerable here?
Blacks.
Yeah, white does have some, black does have some nice pieces around here, but yes, it's black's king is kind of naked. So when you do the assessment, you do a plan, but it's black's move. And black is trying to not to lose number one rule. If you have an inferior position or a losing position, the number one rule is not to lose. And then, of course, if you can win, that'd be great. Queen f5, watching against queen takes pawn and also attacking the bishop on f4. What should white do?
Can you cut the bishop again with rook b8? No, can't.
White to play.
Capture anything?
Huh?
The rook, not the bishop.
Bishop takes rook.
Instead of queen f5, you don't want to capture anything?
Capture what?
Something. Like two things hanging.
Well, he can play queen takes bishop, but after queen check, his position looks like it falls apart, followed by rook takes. King is extremely vulnerable. So Kasparov decided, that's why he decided not to take. It's very important not to lose these two pawns. So queen f5, and white guarded the bishop, bishop e3, and black won the rook. Bishop e1, queen e1. Okay, now how do you assess their position? What should the plan be?
Well, two bishops for rook is a loser.
Two bishops for a rook and a pass pawn, he may be a winner. So Kasparov played king f8.
Wait, isn't McDonald playing
Yeah.
I'm sorry, McDonald played king f8. White to play, and best defense is sometimes a good offense. Queen a1. You can have my bishop, I'll take your rook. So black played queen takes h3. Nice clever tactic. What happens if white takes the rook? Queen g4, king up, king f1, queen e1, perpetual check. So white to play, bishop f4. Put a stop to perpetual check. Black to play, queen g4 check, bishop e3. Because his rook is hanging, he doesn't have time for a nice move like this. Otherwise, it would have been a great move.
Rook takes F2.
Rook takes f2.
Kings.
Queen F3.
Ooh. Interesting.
No, rook takes F2, queen H8.
Yeah, queen h8 is probably better.
H1.
So black played queen e2, guarding the rook. So what should white do? His bishop is hanging. This is a serious threat. And white to play queen a8. There's a nice discovery, right? Bishop h5 check, winning the queen. Black to play queen d1 check, king h2, and queen d4. So white can give a discovered check, but there is no viable target. Black pieces are in dark squares. White to play, the least he can get out of this is winning a pawn or two. So this position objectively should be a win for white, and it is. Bishop c6 discovered check, king g7. White can capture the pawn, but he's trying to improve the position of his queen and bring the queen as close as possible to the king. So queen a7 check, king g8, and queen d7. Nice move. While black doesn't have a good check, his threats are serious. Check here with the bishop, followed by bishop e5 mate. Okay, what should Kasparov do? The position looks extremely critical.
Black to move or white?
I'm sorry, black to play, McDonald. Kasparov has a winning position. So white's king is very vulnerable. So he decided to make the king even more naked, driving the two pieces away from there. Rook takes f2. Now if black takes, queen takes, and black will have perpetual check. And of course white doesn't want it. So white played king h3, Kasparov, exclam, good move. So again, black's position is critical, but at least white decides to put this rook out of business by pinning it. Rook f3 with the possibility of perpetual check again. So white played bishop takes d5 check. Whose position do you like here?
White.
Definitely white's. So how does black manage to get a draw then? Interesting. It must be due to a mistake on Kasparov's part. Black played king f8. White played queen check, king g7, and queen g5 check. So the bishop is guarded with the queen now. In other words, rook takes, black can take with the queen. And this bishop is guarded. That means this pawn could advance. Black played king f8. Okay, has Kasparov improved his queen position, or he can improve even better? He can improve even better. He can win a pawn with check too. Queen check, king here, queen takes h7. You want to milk out of the position as much as possible, and then make that decisive move. King d8, queen g8, king e7, queen e6, king f8. Okay, is there any way white can improve his queen position, or should he give some more checks? White was hoping to check with the queen on one of these squares, but it doesn't do anything. So here, he throw in one more check, queen d6, king g7, queen e7 check. So black played king h6. Which pawn? E4 pawn?
Yeah, you can take the e4 pawn.
Right, that was his goal. He gave all those checks in order to be able to win this pawn now. And he did. And it was a mistake.
Oh, let's take a look. Well, the king's still got the h5 score, so there's no stalemate yet. Oh, okay.
This is like a puzzle. Black to play and draw.
Yeah, yeah.
So you have to get rid of the rook first.
Rook g3.
Rook g3, king g3.
And then queen e5.
No, then queen takes bishop, maybe.
Rook takes. That's a whole piece, right? So he has to capture. And here comes a beautiful fork and finesse.
I think I know what face he Kasparov made. So he did one of his faces.
Isn't that beautiful? So this is another way to try to save your position. Since we're talking about the art of defense, anything you can resort to, this is a beautiful swindle. Look how much white is ahead. Queen, bishop, and a pawn. And just in the right time. I don't know about the time situation, but it's Simo, so probably black had plenty of time. And he found the move.
Wow.
So hope you guys enjoyed it.